Now, the courage to change the things I can. I want to explore this word courage. It's not the audacity to change the things I can. It's not the strength to change the things I can. It's not the patience to change the things I can. It's not the willingness to change the things I can. It's the courage. Courage is required for growth. Massive courage. Courage beyond courage that makes most of us so existentially terrified. Lately in my life, many people who are close to me have been doing ayahuasca retreats and coming back and reporting the stories of their retreats to me. I've never done ayahuasca. I've experimented with LSD, with psilocybin, MDMA, all kinds of things. I've never done ayahuasca. I've been sober for 5 years. I haven't done any psychedelic drugs in that time. Well, for 4.5 years. And, but all these people close to me in my life have been coming back and telling me their story. And it's always just this monumental shift. It's this massive, huge spiritual experience that is a tectonic shift in their life. It's a massive moment of learning and instruction and growth. But the stories are also like remarkably similar every time. It's always the same story. And to anyone who's never done it, there are many elements of the story, and maybe you've heard someone report one of these stories that are like nightmarishly terrifying. Like, it's like everyone's like, I got to tell you about my ayahuasca retreat, man. It was so beautiful. It was so amazing. And you're like, oh yeah, tell me about it. I can't wait to hear about it. And you sit down and you get ready to hold the space for them. And you get ready to like, be like, oh, tell me all about it. And they start off and they're like, so I went up there and I'm just a ball of anxiety. I'm just so nervous. I don't know what's coming next. I'm so nervous the entire, like as we're setting up, I feel so uncomfortable. Everything my body's telling me to run. Already a person like me with panic disorder is like, like, okay. And then it gets really cool. And they're like, yeah. So then we sit down, we're all in this like dark space where like, we can't really see anything. And there's someone drumming a drum and kind of like humming something. And I'm like, all right, I don't know if this makes me feel any better. This kind of feels a little anxiety inducing. Sure. Keep going. What happens next? So like, but then the shaman leading everything says, who would like to come up and have their first dose of the medicine? And you go up and you drink the medicine. And I'm like, yeah. And then things get really cool. And they're like, and then you get sicker than you've ever been in your life. You fall on the floor, writhing in pain, seizing. Your stomach feels worse than you've ever felt in your life. You feel like you are going to throw up so hard that your head is going to explode. You are holding a bucket between your legs and violently retching and just purging everything in your body. You collapse to the floor in a heap of sweat and chills. You're shaking and violently writhing on the floor, thinking, is this it? Is this the end? Am I going to die? You're just listening to this story, just like, when does it get good? When does the good part happen? Like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. They're like, you barely managed to stand up and crawl to the bathroom. Now it's coming out the other end. You got diarrhea and you're projectile vomiting out of both ends. You're violently shaking. While all this is happening, you're launched into a black void where a voice is telling you that this might be the end, that you are at death's doorstep, that this is death. You are literally being confronted with all of your most extravagant, extraordinary fears, like the height of pain. Just like, what is the most pain you can imagine experiencing? We're going to give it to you. Physical pain, the pain of illness, the pain of feeling like your body is shutting down and dying. Existential pain, the pain of losing a sense of time and self and awareness and being literally at the door of the Grim Reaper, at the door of death. That fear, just the pain of living in that fear, just all of the worst nightmares you can possibly imagine manifest after you take this medicine. And you're also in a room where some guy is drumming and humming while all of this is happening. The universe is coming to you and saying, what do you want? Do you want to die or do you want to live? And saying, I don't really give a shit. It's kind of dragging you by the hair into this situation and going, I don't actually care what you do. You're free to die right now if you want. You can give up and die here, or you can live and I can teach you something. And all of this, you're going like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. How are you? And then suddenly the story switches. They make the decision to accept the pain and to accept the turmoil and to accept the terror and to accept the nightmare and to live and to accept the instruction. And invariably, the experience transforms into a reward of knowledge and fulfillment and pleasure that is tenfold what the pain was. And that's really how the story goes every single time. That's an abridged version of the story, but that's the story. Worst thing you've ever heard, like worst thing you've ever heard of, worst thing you can imagine, being willing to go through the crucible of that. And on the other end of that, experiencing extreme pleasure and knowledge and, growth. I'm not saying that everybody listening to this on the live streams, on Spotify, wherever you are, should go out and do an ayahuasca retreat. The ayahuasca retreat is more of a metaphor for how change and how growth occurs in your life, and how the reason why courage is required. Because hearing these stories from my friends who have gone on these retreats does not make me feel brave about going and doing something like this on my own. It inspires great fear in me. And courage is the willingness to act in the face of fear. It is not the absence of fear. Courage is not a person who doesn't feel fear. Courage is a person who feels extreme fear, extraordinary fear, overwhelming fear, and steps into it willingly. So what is needed for the courage to change the things I can, myself, and my approach to the world, is the willingness to step into extraordinary pain and fear and discomfort in whatever scenario it might be. It doesn't have to be an ayahuasca retreat. It could be a marriage that you know is falling apart and is not working anymore, and you require the courage to go through the painful process of divorce, the overwhelmingly, unimaginably painful process of the different conversations that are going to have to be had, and the divvying up of things and items and a life shared together. Being willing to go through the crucible of that pain and that discomfort, and the courage to trust. There's a lot of trust and faith involved in this, to trust that being willing to go through that pain and that discomfort will yield a process of learning and instruction and peace and growth and ecstasy and pleasure that is tenfold what the pain was. So there's a lot of faith here. There's a lot of faith, like the faith that I can withstand the pain, that I'm capable of taking it, that I can have the pain come and be okay, the courage to trust that I'll be okay and that I can stand that much pain, and the courage to trust that on the other side of that pain might be something really, really, really special.